Welcome back, everyone. I hope you are having a wonderful National Intern Day. At College to Congress, we know change does not happen in a vacuum, and there are so many ways to create a better world. Of course, one of those ways is through art and filmmaking. Films allow us to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, to experience what they're going through, and to allow it to change our thought process. So, when we were offered the opportunity to screen the documentary Boy State by Apple Original Films and A24, we could not help but share it with you first. I think you are going to grow to love the organization Boy State and the film directors and the boys who are part of this to make it happen as much as we did. And since I created College to Congress just 4 years ago, I have consistently heard C2C interns, DC political professionals, even elected members of Congress tell me about their experiences with Boys State and Girls State. We even have alum on our own team here at College to Congress. So hopefully you were able to view the private link that we sent out to all of our attendees this weekend, thanks to Apple Original Films and A24. And without further ado, allow me to introduce one half of the Boys State directing team, Jesse Moss. Of course, we're sad that his creative partner, Amanda, is not able to join us today, but we know Jesse will well represent her. We also have the film stars, Stephen Garza and Renee Otero. So they're going to tell us all about their experience in Boy State, what it was like having a film crew follow them around for a whole week. And I want to point out that they were in some brutal Texas heat. As a Texas native myself, I could just put myself in their shoes knowing they're not just politicking, they're out there trying to survive and stay hydrated. I'd love to start with introductions. Jesse, can you share a little bit about yourself? And I heard that you are a congressional intern, so I'd love to hear about that too.
Sure. Thanks, Audrey, and thanks to College to Congress for the opportunity to share this film with you and have a conversation about it. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I work with my wife and my creative partner, Amanda McBain, who's my co-director on the film. Hopefully, she'll be joining us just a few minutes late, but it's so exciting to share this film and the conversation it provokes with all of you. This is a film that we found we wanted to make as a way to engage these questions we had about polarization in American politics and our seeming inability to talk to each other across party lines. And through Boy State and through the young men you meet in the film, we found a really fascinating window into the state of politics today. Before I became a documentary filmmaker, I worked in politics in my early 20s. In fact, during college, I interned in the US Senate for the Senate Energy Committee. And it's actually reflecting back on that experience and what this program that you're involved in is doing is really important to me. I think opening up those opportunities to everybody to intern, then to go into politics, to work in Congress if that's what they want to do, making sure that people on Capitol Hill represent the country and its diversity is extremely important. So look forward to a conversation.
Likewise, and I can't wait to dig into your background. Stephen, can you start us off next?
Yeah, definitely. So, Stephen Garza. I ran for governor in the Boy State film, 2018 Texas Boy State. I'm currently a student at the University of Texas at Austin, where I'm majoring in government. Hope to continue pursuing politics professionally and maybe end up working on the Hill one day. Stuck home here in quarantine and been just kind of spending some time with my family. It's very important to me.
Well, go Longhorns. I'll share this secret with you. UT was always my dream school, but I moved to Florida halfway through my life, so I didn't get that in-state tuition. So very jealous of you getting to live your best Austin dreams. I see we have a hater down here shaking his head. He said, no, don't go Longhorns.
No, that's not me hating that. I think that's me being more sympathetic and disappointed for you, because as a fellow Longhorn, I will agree. It's quite sad to not be one.
Yeah. Yeah, so tell us about yourself, Renee. You have such a big personality in the film. It's so cool to see you face to face, even if it's through a screen. But I think, you know, my entire team fell in love with you when we watched this film, and so excited that you could join us today. We literally were on Slack like, yay, Renee. So would love to hear a little bit about yourself.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Audrey, for that introduction. It's really sweet. My name is Renee Otero. I was the Nationalist State Party chair within the documentary. I'm currently a student at UT Austin, Holcomb. I study international relations, double major with Black Studies. I want to grow up, be a professor one day. I'm also an intern. So thank you for this beautiful National Intern Day celebration. For all my fellow interns out there, I really identify with the struggle. I'm trying to get that resume builder, but not really getting paid. So unionize. That's my intro.
I love it. And, you know, so many students, I feel like the pandemic has affected everyone, right? But I have a heart for college students, for the class of 2020, for people who would have been doing these life-changing internships this summer, who are now at home, and we're trying to get creative and trying to figure out a way to still push forward. Just from watching you guys, I feel like I can tell you're going to pour that creative energy into something. You're going to figure out a way to still make, you know, this summer worthwhile, to make it impactful. And like you said, build that resume. I'll definitely be snagging the two of you after this to get you on C2CU, because I'm sure you both have political careers ahead of you. Before we do that, I wanted to learn a little bit more about Boys State. So not all of our viewers may know what Boys State is, and I do want to point out there is a girl state as well. So we're making sure that everything's even Steven. But I'd love to hear, kind of in your own words, what is Boys State and what did it mean to you? Steven, do you want to start?
So Boys State Growth State, American Legion Boys State Growth State is a program founded about 85 years ago by the American Legion, actually originally to promote patriotism against communist groups in the country, funny enough. And it's held in every single state in the country except Hawaii for whatever reason. And they've basically taken about a week the entire state government system in their own state. So for us, Texas Boys State, it's the Texas political system. And in a week, you run for political office, you build political parties. If you're not interested in really running for office, both electorally or party politics, there's a press corps you can join and be a member of the media. If you don't care about that either, you could join the Boys State Band. If you have a talent to show off, you can join the talent show. There's so much to do at Texas Boys State, and every single program is different depending on where you are. Some Boys State have a court system where they actually elect judges and hold court cases. It's completely insane, the different experiences that I've, in promoting this film, have run into from people that say like, oh man, our Boys State's a lot different than yours. It's a lot crazier. And it's like, how is that possible? So it's such an amazing program. Again, colleges really love that, having that on the resume. The 1,000 kids that are there are considered the best that Texas has to offer. And it's, of course, you see a lot of alumni, President Bill Clinton, Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, Vice President Dick Cheney, Senator Cory Booker, Rush Limbaugh, all alumni of the Boys State program. And it's just, I really encourage anybody who is interested remotely in politics to apply in their own state.
Renee, anything you would like to add to that, just about your personal experience with it and what you got out of it?
For sure. First of all, thank you, Steven, for that really comprehensive history. I honestly learned a little bit as you were speaking. For me, initially after my first bout with Boys State, I was like, wow, this is what inspired the Stanford prison experiment. Because I was like, you give all these teenage boys power and they're going to act on that power. But then after I left the experience, had a little bit more contemplation, I realized that Boys State is more of a sandbox for which, a whole bunch of youth can, play politics inconsequentially, which for some people seems dangerous, but in reality, it's, a really early litmus to see what the youth's passion for politics are.
I love that. I think your insight there, it's incredibly wise. And it actually reminds me of a point in the film where, you mentioned that you brought a lot of your liberal shirts and you wanted to come and you wanted to start fights and you wanted to make a statement. And then you had this really, it seemed like an epiphany where you're like, actually, I want to listen and I want to learn. And I just stopped the film, rewind, watched it again. I was like, I wish more people in Washington had this moment. I'd love to kind of hear in your own words, like, what was that like? What started it? Was there like one moment in particular that made you kind of switch gears a bit?
Yeah, for sure. So, I came into the space not knowing at all what Boy State was. Learned about it a week before. And my mom was in that line with me. She was like, look, Renee, don't look like there's very many brothers around here. And I'm like, look, I know. I noticed that first. She's like, and it seems pretty conservative. If you want to come home, you let me know. And so the thing that kind of kept me motivated was like, I don't want to look weak to my mama. Like, I want to come, pick me up from Boy State. I'm having a great time. That and the fact that, like, I already came in prepared to change up to survive the space, because I was not in a space that definitely seemed accommodating to me, my beliefs, my community, right? But then, Jesse and Amanda, they came up to me after the second day. That video, that part of the speech, the part of the documentary where I'm giving that speech, that was the first time I came in contact with Jesse and Amanda, and they're like, we have to have you on the project. So now I have cameras on me. So now I'm going to be immortalized. So I had the responsibility to be more genuinely me. Coupled with the fact that I was under also like, new environment, new circumstances. I was surrounded by conservative folks, but I didn't want to, have to, play their game or whatever, to feel like I was able to navigate the space. So, my only option was to listen. So I'm going to say this, Audrey, it's not really something of my own, nobility or my moral come to Jesus moment. Rather, it was literally, I had no other option. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, you learn so much when you listen. And at College to Congress, we run a program called Bipartisan Allies that essentially do what you were forced into, except people opt into it. But people will self-identify. I'm a Texas Democrat, and we'll pair them with like a New Hampshire Republican, and we'll always pair them off something that they genuinely love. So maybe they were both a part of Boy State, so they always kind of have this safe issue, if you will, to tap out whenever politics gets heated. They know they can come back and have something that bonds them. And when I saw that, I was like, that's why I created Bipartisan Allies, because even when we don't want to, when we're forced to listen, we are going to learn. And it doesn't mean we're going to agree with what we're learning, but it will help us better understand so we can still get to our end goal of change. And it kind of seems like that's what you had. You were like, I'm not necessarily backing down. I'm not changing who I am, but I'm going to find another way to get to where I need to go. So I thought that political strategy on your hand was actually quite calculating and just, to be honest, very impressive. So I was very impressed with just a lot of the maneuvers that you took. There were just so many cool moments in the film. There was one highlight at the end, Stephen, of you going and speaking at the Texas Democratic Convention. And it was just like a tweet and a blurb. I could not help but Google. I wanted to see whatever clips I could find. I found a few. And watching it, I kept thinking, this guy's gonna run for office. So you said earlier in your intro, you're interested in working on the Hill. I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about your political aspirations. What attracts you to politics? What do you kind of see as the avenue to move forward in a public service career?
Yeah, definitely. So the Democratic convention happened I believe, about a week and a half, 2 weeks after Boy State ended. I didn't ask to be a speaker. Somebody actually, a friend, Carl Davis, actually spoke to the TDP, Texas Democratic Party, and said, hey, there's this student who is a gun reform activist, and we think he should be a speaker. And then I get an email maybe 4 or 5 days. I was planning on going as a guest to the convention, but then I get a email about 4 or 5 days before the event saying, congratulations, this is your speaker time. And I see that I'm going after Secretary Julian Castro, who ran for president. He introduced our party chair. So I'm following the party chair and going before this mayor of my city, Sylvester Turner. I was shaking backstage. And I had a camera crew with me backstage, not backstage, there to film the event, and I couldn't stop shaking. I was so nervous. And to those people that say that, hey, it's so bright, the lights, that you can't see anybody, I could have picked out individual friends in the crowd from the podium. You can see every single person that's there. But I also have the mindset that this could be a defining moment in my political career. And so as soon as they said my name, I just had to walk out there like I owned the place, even though I felt like I was in a melt, and was able to get through the speech. Um, and we had these, behind me were these international students, some of them wearing their traditional clothing from where they came from. And such an amazing moment. So yeah, I do continue to have political aspirations. I do want to work on political campaigns after I graduate, and um, maybe work in administration or in somebody's office one day. And who knows if maybe one day there comes an opportunity where it seems that I have a chance to run for office. And like I said in the film, I'm not too comfortable with the term politician just because of the negative connotation. I prefer the term public servant, because at the end of the day, that's what I personally believe it should be, that I should serve maybe 2 or 3 term limit, through 2 or 3 terms, do what I can, and then, step aside and let somebody else from my community represent where I live. So that's kind of what I have in my head right now. That's my headspace. I'm hoping to pursue that. And the work that I've been reading about College to Congress past few days, when I got the email about it, and it's such an amazing organization because it would allow somebody from my background that may not have the funds or the opportunities where I come from to be able to get an internship, or working in somebody's office and adding that to my resume, because like it says that it's almost a prerequisite to be an intern on Capitol Hill to be able to end up having a job there. So thank you guys for the work that you do.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. And you have a direct line to College to Congress now. So consider me an ally, an advocate, a champion of you. I love what you said about public service versus a politician. I think a lot of people, when they think about politics and politicians, they have a very negative connotation. But so many Americans are still inspired by the change that is to come. And I think that's where public service steps in. And it's all about putting the community first and the people first. So I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. You were talking about your nerves from speaking, which is totally understandable. I get them too. Even people get them on Zoom. And I couldn't help but realize we have an award-winning speaker here in front of us today. So Renee, so many of our students have to, whether it's give speeches or do interviews, they're doing these on Zoom, they're doing them in person. People just get scared. Public speaking is like one of the top fears in the world. You seem to do it seamlessly. So if you could share some tips with students, just really actionable things that they're concrete that they could do, we would love that.
Absolutely. I would definitely say that the speech giving process is really a process about trusting yourself and to trust the people who are judging you. I believe that there's an issue with confidence that causes us to, the issue of confidence, rather the fact that we don't even believe the words that we're saying, or we don't feel like our words are good enough, right? So then our performance becomes nervous. And so then the thing about the judges, sometimes we get to the point where we're self-righteous about the things that we want to say because it's our ideas. So we cannot be told otherwise on how to fix it, how to update it. But to trust the people who are judging you and critiquing you, that's the only way you're really going to grow. But I will say that I do believe that public speaking and access to services to help people with public speaking needs to be on net accessible, because I know what public speaking has done for me. And so I believe that everyone deserves the chance to see if public speaking can do the same for them. So yeah, just in general, it's really just you that's in your way when you're giving speeches.
So take yourself out of the equation, follow through with the actions, and you'll get it done. I want to shift gears a little bit and speak to Jesse, one of our filmmakers. Jesse, you and I both come from political backgrounds. When I was watching the film, I kept feeling like it was this like look into national politics. It was this like, tiny zoomed in view of what I actually see at the national level. Curious if you felt the same way. I'm sure there were so many things behind the scenes that probably didn't even make it into the film, that you could probably pick headlines today that point to. So would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, that's right. I think what we were attracted to was how sophisticated this program is and how many dimensions, as Stephen talked about, there actually are at Texas Boys State and many of the other boys and girls state programs. There's the legislature, there's the party structure, there's running for office. And clearly the boys in Texas, they had the previous year voted to secede from the Union. They were feeling what we're all feeling. And so the ways in which they reflected our kind of adult reality were clearly present and felt. And I thought, it's so hard sometimes for us to engage with the national political conversation. We get turned off. But there was also something very playful about what was happening in Texas. And I thought, well, here is a way for us to really think about national politics. Of course, we didn't know what we would find, but we were very hopeful. And I think what we first found were young men like Stephen and Renee and Ben and Robert, who were very smart and sophisticated about politics already. And we didn't know initially who we would want to cast, but once we met them, it was obvious. Like, these guys take this process seriously. They take democracy seriously. They're open to learning. And as we've talked about, like hearing from the other side, I think all of those made them sort of perfect vehicles, if you will, to kind of go through this experience and watch them learn and sort of challenge themselves. And I think the ways in which the story ends up mirroring national politics, like part of that is kind of luck. And I think one thing is there was a kind of chaos and disorder, anarchy almost, to the behaviors that we see initially. But I loved how both Stephen and Renee could really tap into the better angels of the rabble and kind of lift them up with their idealism and their hope and their integrity. And I think in that message is, I think, something that we're all searching for in national politics. Whatever our party persuasion, we're looking to be hopeful and optimistic and come together. And the ways that they brought boys together, I think, is something we can all learn from as we think about how we move forward as a country.
So is that really what you want the audience to take away from the film, is that there's still diamonds in the rough, there's still people who are going to positively uplift us, and we need to help them get to these positions? I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's just kind of what I'm hearing.
I mean, it was clear that for us as storytellers, that where Renee and Stephen were coming from, particularly as voices from underrepresented communities who were challenging a system and a structure that hasn't always given them a voice and given them an opportunity, that was really important to us. And not only to see them challenge that system, but to kind of overcome it in a way and to forge those relationships on their own terms was really inspiring. And I think why a program like College to Congress, which I think embodies similar values, is so important. I think our democracy is only as healthy as its diversity is representative of our country. And I think we've gotten to a point, I think we can all recognize, where there's a sickness to our system and we need to cure it. And one way we can address that, it's not the only way, but it's a complicated problem, but it's to ensure a diversity of voices and viewpoints and lifting people up and recognizing that we're not all born with equal opportunities, and we need to work to ensure that there is equality. I think Texas Boys State has a lot of work to do. I think our country has a lot of work to do. I'm sure Congress as an institution has a lot of work to do. But I think we all recognize that if we work together, we can make real progress.
Absolutely. And I mean, Renee was such a great example of this in the film whenever they tried to impeach him. And I'm sure there were many moments that could have made it into the film, and this one did. And I would love to hear your thinking behind that and why. I mean, of course, I have my own opinions, and I love the way you responded to that entire situation. But Jesse, I'd love to hear from your point of view. What do you think was so important about including that moment?
Well, it was really interesting to see Renee initially embraced so passionately by so many in his party, but I think quickly there were challenges to his leadership, and whether those came for political reasons or personal reasons. I think it's, it's clear in the film that there are people who are uncomfortable with who Renee is, and I think didn't want him leading that party. I think that, Renee is committed to leading that party in a constructive way. I remember in particular, well, this is a side note, but there was a wonderful scene when Renee was under threat of impeachment, and he was working with his rules committee to draw up a set of impeachment rules that would ensure that, essentially to protect him from this, it was really a minority faction which was threatening his leadership. They were a loud but small voice. And Renee was very skillful politically, I think, in protecting what he was trying to accomplish. And that was a scene that we ended up not including, that small scene, but I think there's a beautiful moment when Renee faces down that threat. And you see that it's actually is, Renee says like 12 people. They could barely field an intramural basketball team, right? But I guess it's the power of a loud minority. And
yeah, it almost felt like a warning label, including that. And Renee, kudos to you for knowing the rules, being such a humble leader to say, if this is what you want, let's move forward. But here's how we're going to move forward. And then really forcing people, like, if you're going to have this opinion, which we know where it's rooted, then you're going to have to stand up in front of everyone and show it. And I mean, I just thought it was, I get like goosebumps because it's such courageous leadership. And again, it's like a microcosm of national politics because we see it sometimes, but we don't see it enough. And I think if we had more people like you, like Stephen, Lauren knows Ben is going to be running their campaigns. I just see like political strategists in the making. If we had more people like you guys up here helping us, I truly do believe we'd be a more functional, more representative, and have better approval ratings. People would be happier with the government they have. So I truly do think you guys are leaders in the making. You're showing it, you're living it. Jesse, before we conclude, I have so many questions for you, but I know we have to be cautious and respectful of your time. I'd love to hear a little bit about what surprised you most, whether it was people, whether it was afterwards when you were watching it, just what surprised you most in this entire process of making the film?
As I touched on earlier, I think that the single thing is that Renee and Stephen could find success, to find support, to go as far as they did, to lift up that community with a positive message. I expected to find, that sort of craziness that we see in the beginning of the film. I did not expect to see someone like Stephen from his background rally together, first his city and then his party, and then many others across the spectrum of Boy State who are predominantly white and conservative. That was probably the single most surprising thing. Of course, they themselves, these guys, surprised us every day in how thoughtful, bold, reflective, smart they were about this process and how to move through it with integrity. But I guess in a way, I kind of knew that they were those guys to begin with. So I think coming away with a general sense of positivity was what I didn't necessarily, I hoped to find, but I didn't expect to find. And in Texas, of all places, a place kind of riven by controversy and, as you know, as a Texan, actually it was notable that the legislature in Texas, Boy State, actually passed a meaningful background checks bill. This is something that the adults, as Stephen points out, cannot do. And the boys at Boy State could do it. And I think that these guys, and I'm sure a lot of people in your program who are, young people leading by moral example are becoming very powerful voices in our national political conversation, standing up and recognizing that the adults are not going to fix their problems. And it's up to them to throw themselves into the process, and that democracy is not a spectator sport. You can't sit on the sidelines and hope that the problem's going to fix itself. You got to throw yourself into it. Like everybody who wants to go intern in Congress, maybe work there, these guys finding ways to serve their communities. you know, you have to find your own way into that system. But it was inspiring to see that at Boise State.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, after watching the film, I felt very optimistic and I felt very inspired. So your goal was certainly accomplished. I think one of the most important things for, you know, political professionals, intern, people who want to intern and get involved is to have a very realistic optimism about you, because you have to operate in the world you're in. Just like Renee was like, okay, you want to impeach me? Let's go. But I know I'm going to make it through this, and here's how. Because I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to make sure that I practice what I preach, and people are going to stand up for me because of that. So just thank you so much, Stephen, Jesse, Renee. Thank you for making this film, for being a part of it. Thank you for joining us here today. For those in our National Intern Day audience who did not get our sneak peek this weekend, fear not, you can still watch this Sundance award-winning documentary, Boise State. Apple Original Films and A24 are going to release this for streaming on August 24th on Apple TV. So take out your phones right now, open up your calendar, set a date, August 14th, Apple TV, Boise State. I'll be right there with you with my popcorn watching it. Thank you guys, we appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Thank you.